keep answering, but thank you both so much for that presentation. And Mary and Stewart, feel free to share your screens and take it away.
Hi, is my presentation showing?
Yep, here we can see
All
it.
right, awesome. Um, hello, I'm Mary Mellon. I'm presenting today with Stewart Engart, PhD, and we both work for the Duke University Libraries, and we'll be talking about some bulk note and agent link transformations we are doing through the ArchivesSpace API. So our ArchivesSpace instance is hosted by Lyrasis. Our main repository holds records for the David M. Rubenstein Rare Book and Manuscript Library, and we use Arclight for our discovery layer. Here's some more information about our institutional roles. Suffice it to say, I do a lot of metadata maintenance through the staff interface, and I work with Stewart when we need to do bulk updates through the API. Our current bulk updating project is tied to a local Arclight development sprint that is starting to wrap up. The two goals that we are supporting with metadata updates are enabling a facet for browsing by research center, which functionally are sub-repositories of the Rubenstein Library, and improving the display of access restriction notes and physical and technical notes in the UI. Our first task was to review and update Research Center links to collections to make sure collections weren't being missed in the Browse feature. We represent research centers as agents and document their relationships to resources by applying a role of source and a relator of repository when linking to resources. This combination of attribute values is reserved specifically for research centers. To review existing linkages, I ran a query on the MySQL database to return resource IDs and linked agent relationship roles and relator terms for the set of agent IDs associated with our research centers. I contributed this query to the DUL GitHub repository for ArchivesSpace scripts. I believe the pull request is pending, since I will probably need to check on these agent links periodically in the future. So I identified two types of problems through this reporting. We had resources linked to one or more agents with incorrect or missing attribute values. That included non-research center collection headings that were using attribute values reserved for research centers. And we also identified resources missing one or more agent links. So I compiled two CSVs of the records to update based on the problem type and handed them off to Stewart.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so my role here is to empower Mary to make these changes on scale. So she's operating at the level of spreadsheets, more or less, as exports from the SQL itself. And so, given her save SQL queries, I knew what the format of these spreadsheets were going to be. Next slide, Mary. And so all then that on my side, and as Michael presented on earlier, there's a lot of duplicate code dealing with, connecting to ArchivesSpace. But mostly what I'm doing is comparing what exists through the API in ArchivesSpace to what we're getting out of the SQL queries, and then creating new roles, new relators. And most of the code here is actually for checking by Mary prior to running. Even though we do have a dev instance, I want to make sure that we're not pushing, overriding to our dev instance on scale. Again, this is all in Python, operating on spreadsheets, because Mary is golden with that. So there you go. Pass. Or back to you, Mary.
All right, and just as an example, this is a demo of the feature and development for our Browse Collections by Research Center facet. And there's a before and after of when we ran the update script on production. And you can see, well, hopefully you can see that the numbers of collections associated with research centers grew, and we also eliminated some kind of fake research centers from our results.
Mhm.
So our second bulk update task was to review or migrate select conditions governing access notes to physical characteristics and technical requirements notes. Um, so some format-based restrictions we have need to be migrated to phys-tech notes to improve identification and locating of content-based restrictions in Arclight for our staff and researchers. And as a bonus, this would improve our DAX compliance. Rubenstein currently uses 17 local access restriction type values and standardized restriction language for notes with guidelines for various levels of description from collection through item level. And this was done for consistency and also hopefully to make future bulk language updates possible if necessary. So here's a list of all the local access restriction types we currently use. I outlined in red the 4 types that are specifically format based that could potentially be moved to physical and technical notes. I was able to adapt some existing SQL queries from our GitHub repository that are linked here for reporting on access restrictions on resources and on archival objects. After some initial reporting, it was clear that there's still a lot of legacy language and local type usage that was never updated after our current guidelines were put into place a few years ago. Many of these records are going to need some human review by curators and archivists before we can move ahead with updating those notes. But I was able to identify a subset of notes that didn't need any further review and created a test set of records for Stewart to use in creating the API scripts. And since this was going to be an ongoing process with a lot of cleanup, I asked Stewart to build in an option to provide updated note content as well during the process.
Yeah, thank you. And so again, we're getting output from SQL queries. Again, understand what type of format we're dealing with, and go to the next slide. And it's more or less iterating through the list of notes, checking the type of note, comparing it to what we're expecting, and next slide. And then pushing, forming a new dictionary to push back up to ArchivesSpace. And this all of this is as addition, I said, be able to run it through a dry run, but also kind of having extensive logging in the use case that maybe something goes wrong. So everything could be reversible, and logging to file when possible, so that we could turn back worst case scenario. But again, we are running this, of course, on development before we move on to production. Next slide. Kind of the next steps for this, as I see, is again, my role here is to empower Mary, and I work across the libraries with different projects, and we're moving a lot to running things inside of GitLab runners. That would be more or less, she updates a file, things happen, she reviews it, and then she gives an okay. So working, being able to do her job easier, and that's the goal. So thank you.
I appreciate that. So thanks everybody for listening, and I've added some links to our contact info, our scripts on GitHub, and some more info about Arclight and the Arclight community if anybody is interested.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Stuart. That was perfect timing as well. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A, but obviously people can post in there if they want. We will keep things moving otherwise, but yeah, I'm volunteering Stuart and Mary again. If a question pops up in the Q&A, if you could maybe type an answer in a few minutes. But thank you. That was really great. This is going well. We're just moving through these. This is awesome. All right. So next up we have Lynn and Elizabeth. If you'd like to go ahead and share your screen and take it away.